Jughead would fit in at one of those film schools
when
he's talking about Tarantino, and he'd probably have a lot of pals to talk about Tarantino with. Tarantino, the world's greatest feminist. Excuse me while I throw up in my mouth a little. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another exciting episode of XOXO Riverdale. Yum, 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 yum. It's going to be delicious. That's why I said yum, 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 yum. It's a delicious Jughead-centric episode.
Yes.
The Last Picture Show, episode 4. So before we get into talking about The Last Picture Show, episode 4, what's going on in Riverdale news, Riverdale social media? What's been happening?
Follow literally everyone on Instagram. They
Mm-hmm.
all just do gym shots, just film each other in the gym.
I know, which is wonderful. I love watching people work out in the gym while I lie on my back and watch other people work out instead of me working out.
Yes, I hate working out and come up with lots of medical reasons not to do it.
Excellent.
The big news is that Mark Consuelos is definitely in town. We know that he's been cast as Hiram Lodge. I was talking to Louie a little bit before. He is now a series regular on a medical drama on NBC in the 4th season that always airs in the off season. I think that maybe I'm the only one watching.
Oh, okay.
But it films in Canada as well.
Yeah, we just need to figure out where it films.
Right, and it also, though, begs the question, what else is he doing? Like, is he just doing TV show after TV show after TV show? Like, he has kids.
Yeah, but
he has money.
that's probably a pretty great way to really bank.
Yeah, you know what?
If you're a series regular on 2 shows, or even if you're a secondary character on one of those shows.
Recurring.
Yeah, recurring, exactly.
And you know, if they're in the same part of Canada, I mean,
it might
it's
be easy.
Very stabilizing, but also his ex-wife is in New York, so
yeah.
That's interesting.
It is interesting, and something else too is it might hint towards Hiram Lodge being used not regularly on Riverdale. He might be not a recurring character, right?
Yeah, just kind of guest appearances.
Yeah, guest appearances with Hiram.
Also, hanging with the fam. Up in Toronto, we had in Vancouver, on Canada Day, it was also Camila Mendez's birthday. And Rob Rako, who was Joaquin, was there.
Which means hopefully he's in season 2.
We got Joaquin back, yeah.
And we're going to talk about Joaquin for those of you
we meet Joaquin this episode.
Just getting to know him. Yeah, absolutely.
Love Joaquin. Have such a crush on Joaquin.
Yes.
Oh, I'm going to update that crush list.
Yeah, he's a great character, and he's very cute.
He was already on it.
Cute actor. Perfect. Perfecto. So, let's delve into this episode.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Episode 4, The Last Picture Show.
Right away, we open with Jughead's opening monologue, as always. And he opens it with that Jason's death is not the first or last casualty that the town of Riverdale will suffer. He's referring directly to the Twilight Drive-In. But I don't believe that it's the last.
Yes, neither do I. Absolutely. And I think it would be sort of inappropriate to assume that would be the final tragedy that your town would ever experience in your lifetime.
Also, that's insane that their town... You know what, though? My town's like that. We don't have, like, a lot of tragedies.
Of
we
course.
have, like, September 11th and then, like, nothing else.
Well, and that's sort of a big plot engine to the show, is that we've talked about this a little bit on this podcast before, but I think it's worth reiterating. We are led to believe that literally before Jason's death, or before all this stuff started happening between Jason and Polly, that the town of Riverdale was basically the town from the traditional Archie Comics, and everything was really in ship shape, hunky-dory, and that what happened between Jason and Polly reveals the dark underbelly of the town, which is interesting, but if you really look at the sequence of events, doesn't totally hold up.
Right.
Because, like, for example, the Southside Serpents probably have had to have existed longer than 6 months, for example.
That'd be incredible if they didn't, though.
That's true. If they just like popped up. Yeah.
And they all like immediately got like dope leather jackets and tattoos.
And they're like, hey, guess what? We're gang now. Yeah, totally.
Oh my god, they all got their like dark marks on their arms.
And the other thing too,
Voldemort's there.
Maybe Voldemort's been influencing this town since the beginning.
We haven't considered it in the past, but maybe it was Voldemort.
It's definitely a possibility.
And Archie's the boy who lived.
Yeah. Archie is certainly not the boy who lived. Jughead is the boy who lived.
Jughead's the boy who lived.
Yeah.
Archie's the like Neville Longbottom who like just missed the cut.
I was gonna say Archie is Ron Weasley.
Yeah. But then who are we putting as Neville? Because Neville plays like a very important role.
Moose. Moose is Neville Longbottom. Obvi. Happy 100th anniversary Harry Potter, right? It was Harry Potter's 100th anniversary.
100 years ago.
Yeah, it's 100 years ago.
100
years old. It was a beautiful thing that happened.
100 years ago, I was Hermione for Halloween, and everyone thought I was just a normal witch because I was the only one that read the book.
Totally, yeah, that's what happened 100 years ago.
I'm 107 years old.
Yes, you are as ancient as the trees, and
as ancient as our good friend Harry Potter.
So is the Harry Potter fandom, yeah. So then we've got next up something we want to talk about is Fred and Archie go and see a recital put on by Ms. Grundy.
Yeah.
And Fred is really taken with her talent, her musicianship. Yeah. And then he says to her, that was really amazing. I'm more of a classic rock guy. But I really like that. Okay,
so funny.
Let's unpack this for a second.
Okay, first of all, Archie is too young for Miss Grundy, Fred is too old.
Yes, and that's such, I think intentionally by the writers, it really heightens the uncomfortableness of this entire segment. And then also, as someone who, in other artistic pursuits, writes for a retro music website, where we cover a lot of like 60s, 70s music. I would never describe myself as a classic rock kind of guy.
I think it's a very dad thing.
It is a dad thing to say, but it's also like I don't feel like classic rock is a real genre, and I feel like anybody that like still listens to those artists, like I think Fred does. Like I think Fred, when he's in his office doing his foremanship stuff, like I think he's got the Rolling Stones playing.
Yeah, I was gonna say he's like my dad.
Yeah, what bands do you think Fred listens to?
Oh, definitely the Stones.
Yeah.
No question, the Stones.
Yeah.
The Who.
Yes. And I think like Zeppelin. I think he's like a Zeppelin guy.
Yeah, but he's not like, Zeppelin can sometimes go like a little too hard. I think
I agree.
He's like a mid-range Bowie.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess. I think he's a little more, a little less fancy.
Right, but he's like the Ziggy Stardust.
Sure. I think he listens to, like, later Beatles.
Yeah, I was going to say later Beatles.
I think he listens to, like, Abbey Road. Yeah.
Maybe, yeah. I'm 100% basing this on what my dad listens to.
That's awesome.
No joke.
Yeah.
Pink Floyd.
Yes, I think he's really into Pink Floyd.
Very into Floyd.
And he's into Dark Side of the Moon, specifically. Yeah. Not The Wall so much because it's too long.
Right.
Yeah.
But really the Stones and the Who are...
Yeah, I'd say the Stones and the Who. That makes a lot of sense for Fred Andrews.
Like, what did I listen to when I was a kid?
Yeah.
Because that's what my dad was saying.
All right. So we've figured out what this guy listens to on a day-to-day basis. Let's move on here. He's definitely a classic rock kind of guy. Next up, cut to Pops, right? Okay, so this is
also an insane scene. This whole episode is bonkers.
It is, but this is a totally okay time to talk about this. I actually think this is the first episode that I would consider a classic episode of this show.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I think
this is the first episode where I was like, I'm going to watch this multiple times.
Yeah, and I think that this episode hits all the main themes of the show in a really strong and meaningful way, which I really enjoy, which we'll get into a little more. But there they are sitting at the table, the gang. It's Kevin, Jughead, Betty, Veronica. And there they are, and Jughead is so pissed that this drive-thru is closing down.
The drive-in closing is the nail in the coffin of the American dream.
Which you take umbrage with.
I hate drive-ins.
Yeah, you don't like drive-ins.
No.
I love drive-ins. I love any old movie type of anything.
Ugh.
And for me, that is absolutely something that I would say in real life. And you are like, this is the most pretentious thing that's come out of Jughead's mouth.
If someone said that to me in real life, the second they turn around, I'd start doing the jerk-off motion.
Oh my God. I really hope that we can still be friends after I say something in front of you like that, because I certainly will, if, you know, as we remain friends.
I will remain friends, but I will do the jerk-off motion behind you.
That's very fair. So then they get into which each of their ideas are for the final movie.
Right.
And Betty says Rebel Without a Cause,
right.
which she's being smart because she's basically saying that Jughead's whole plight to save the drive-in is Jughead being a rebel without a cause. Right. She's equating like the James Dean character with Juggy. And then Veronica says, and this totally makes sense, she says anything with Audrey Hepburn, especially Breakfast at Tiffany's.
Which is so racist.
It is unfortunately a very, very racist film.
Also boring.
Oh, I'm a fan. I do like that movie. I think that's a good movie, other than the era, you know.
Other than the Mickey Rooney role.
Yeah, the era racism, for sure. But it does make sense that she would identify with the Audrey Hepburn character, for sure. And then...
I feel like she said Roman Holiday, not Breakfast at Tiffany's.
No, I think she says Breakfast at Tiffany's.
All right, she should have said Roman Holiday.
She should have, yes. Okay, then. Okay, let's get into this here.
The next two are...
Oh boy.
Doozies.
Okay, so Kevin says the talented Mr. Ripley.
Because he's gay, do you guys get it?
Yeah, so this is another example of this character.
Patricia Highsmith.
Yeah, that's true. And, you know, and I certainly have nothing against the talented Mr. Ripley. I haven't seen
it, but I hear good things. It has Damon, right?
Matt Damon is really good in it.
Yeah.
I saw it when it was in theaters.
Yeah, I was a tiny little baby because I'm a tiny little baby.
Yeah, because I'm slightly older than you. So yeah, I saw it when I was in theaters, and it's a good film, but it's definitely the only film I can think of off the top of my head that's a mainstream enough reference that is basically a film that's noir. And about obsession and also queer themed. So it fits really well with the entire theme of the show. That being said, you know, like other than
I can think of some, but they're not going to be like...
Yeah, like I can think of like Single White Female for another one, but Single White Female is about women. And
there's Dress to Kill with Michael Caine, but that's not going to hit.
Yeah, totally. Like that doesn't hit this audience, but it still really feels so on the nose. Like, you know, I've said this before, I'll say it again. In the comic books, Kevin loves comic books. He loves eating with Jughead. He wants to be a journalist. Any of those aspects to his character could have been brought into this portrayal and would have made him a little more three-dimensional.
He sounds like, to me, like Zach from the OC. Mm-hmm. If you watched the OC. Just like
I didn't watch the OC. Was Zach a gay character?
No, that's the one thing that isn't there, but like he could have been.
That's interesting. Yeah. I'd love to talk to the guy who created Kevin, Dan Parent, who I have interviewed on occasion for different publications and websites and stuff. I'd like to talk to him about if he was inspired by any other characters in terms of Kevin's like taste makeup and like profile. Because I've never talked about that before. Because he made Kevin in the comics is more well-rounded than just liking dudes.
Right, which is definitely what Kevin in the TV show is. Yeah,
he's boy crazy.
He likes a lot of different boys.
He does, but he's definitely boy crazy. Yeah. So then the next thing...
Oh, it's even worse. It gets worse.
Oh, yeah, this is a real betrayal for both Kate and I. We don't like this at all. So here we go. Jughead gets into how much he loves Quentin Tarantino.
Calls him the godfather of indie cinema.
He calls him the godfather of indie cinema. I don't know what planet Juggy is on, but that is not the case.
No.
He's not the godfather of indie cinema. He could certainly be called, like, 90s indie cinema powerhouse, and that would make sense. Definitive filmmaker of his generation.
He's certainly an auteur.
He's an auteur, for sure.
But you know who else is? My boy Michael Bay, so... That's
true. Michael Bay is also an auteur, for sure. There's a lot of people that are auteurs that people don't say are auteurs, but they are. That being said, it's sort of annoying because there's something about when a dude brings up Tarantino...
Oh, that makes me want to blow my brains out.
It almost always feels mansplaining to me.
Yeah.
Why is that? Like, can we talk about that for a second? Because I feel it's out of character for Jughead.
Yeah, I mean, I have, like, personal experience in, like, feminist film classes where guys would come and, like, bring up Tarantino, like, immediately. When I was in college and I did cinema studies, everyone was talking about either Tarantino or 500 Days of Summer.
Oh, as being feminist films?
No, as just being, like, really, like, important to them. And, like, deep and, like, so many levels. And I was like, okay, like...
Yeah. Yeah, it can be really hard to have different tastes than your fellow students. And not just, like, different tastes,
but it was so, like... The second they turn around, I'm doing the jerk-off motion. Like,
yeah.
Like, they're trying so hard. Like, I didn't go to film school. I was a film major at, like, a liberal arts school that was mostly science students.
Yeah, I had a very similar experience in my...
I went to, like, a really heavy STEM college.
Yeah, I also went to... I got my film degree as well. And one of my friends, who was a really nice woman otherwise, but she said she only watched movies that had subtitles.
Ugh.
So, our taste profiles didn't match up, and I wanted to write term papers about Night of the Living Dead, which my film professor had never seen.
What?
Yeah, so it's like stuff like that that's like can really separate you. But Jughead, just to swing it back to the point of our podcast instead of really getting too far off topic.
Days.
Jughead would fit in at one of those film schools when he's talking about Tarantino, and he'd probably have a lot of pals to talk about Tarantino with. Tarantino, the world's greatest feminist. Excuse me while I throw up in my mouth a little. Okay, so we've gone through all that. Yeah, let's move on from all that. So then...
The rest of that scene, though, we do get that great Hermione dressing Cheryl down.
Yeah, Hermione dresses down Cheryl. It's awesome.
It's beautiful.
And then...
Inspiration. In
that scene, Cheryl's with her pals. Mm-hmm. Cheryl is pouring something into her soda with her pals.
Right.
We have a hot debate going on as to what that is.
I'm open to your interpretation. I thought it looked like it was just grenadine and they were making Shirley Temple.
Yeah, out of 7-Ups.
Yeah, it's like a bright red. They have what look like Shirley Temples in front of them on the table. But then later we see them downing it in the backseat of Cheryl's convertible.
So we think maybe they're just drinking, they're just spiking.
Yeah.
Maybe. But then another theory that I have that I think is kind of fun is that Cheryl is spiking their sodas with maple syrup. Because she's just so flush in maple syrup.
So funny.
It's just a fun thing for them to do.
I wonder how that would taste.
Probably too sweet for my liking.
Oh, yeah, well, for sure too sweet. But, like, also, like, if they just use, like... I like the idea of maple-flavored soda, but, yeah, too sweet.
I think maple syrup stirred in with seltzer would be really good.
Yeah.
Just like a teaspoon would be really, really great. Yeah. Anyway.
Maybe we'll try it sometime.
Yeah, totally. Maybe that'll be the official drink of XOXO Riverdale.
Yeah. We'll declare it and then do it once and be like, never again.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, moving on. Next up, what's going on next, Kate? I just want to make sure I don't miss anything.
Jumping back for a second, we did have Riddle Me This hair models of the damned.
Well, that's actually after that scene. That's when they're already in the car. So that is where we're at, which is good. So Riddle Me This, hair models of the damned. Which is a gorgeous Cheryl line.
Beautiful. Yeah,
kudos to whoever wrote that one. Yeah. And that's something so funny about this show in general, is that it is really, there's some writing on this that's so tight and really specific and innovative and gives the show such a unique tone. And then sometimes I think that the writers, on the other hand, completely miss the mark. Which
it feels like to me, like, and this is something I'm guilty of, is that, like, you think back to what you should have said when someone was mean to you, and they're, like, finally getting it on paper.
Yeah.
But it also reminds me, I know for the Mindy Project, if someone, like, says something bullshit and, like, not funny or offensive, their punishment is that they have to write one-liners for Ike Barinholtz's character.
That's very interesting.
And, like...
Yeah, I wonder if there was a punishment to write really fabulous dialogue for Cheryl.
Or, like, you win it, or it's a reward, you get to write Cheryl.
Yeah, because Cheryl's one-liners, I think Cheryl's one-liners and Veronica's one-liners on the show are incredible. Yeah. And Jughead's occasionally as well.
Yes.
They're really the one-liner kings and queens of the season. Anyway, moving on. I'm glad we talked about that, though, because I really do love that line. I agree with that. So then, Betty decides to interview...
second before that, we do have Betty...
Yep, go for it.
What we would say would be Googling.
Oh, wait, did I miss that? Because that's really important.
It.
Oh, jeez. Okay. We need to talk about this for 75 minutes. No.
We're going to say that Googles Miss Grundy by sleuthstering Miss Grundy.
She uses a search engine called Sleuthster that clearly does not exist.
I would rather her use Bing.
Totally. So, okay. So, first of all, they didn't get an endorsement from a search engine is something that must have happened, because they certainly have an endorsement for all the makeup on the show.
Right.
So
also insane that they couldn't even get big.
Yeah, like something happened with that. Or on the other side of it might have something to do with the visuals versus the visual copyright versus saying things out loud. Because then later on, we can talk about this now.
Yeah.
She uses this fake search engine called Sleuthster that exists in this Archie-verse. And then later on, she says, I Googled her. And she says Miss Grundy doesn't have a Facebook page or a LinkedIn.
I recall a few years ago there being like a lawsuit issue with using Google as a verb.
Really? Because she does use Google as a verb.
Yeah, I think they tried to get copyright on that because they had copyright on Google as a noun, but they lost out on it as a verb or something.
Oh, that is very interesting, and there could lie the discrepancy.
Yeah, I wonder if that's what it is.
Yeah, so in that scene, it's shot really strangely, because it's shot in a wide shot where we see the full screen of Sleuthster, where they could have totally avoided that by just shooting a close-up of the search window.
Right.
And it would have been done.
My theory is that they did it with Google, and then at the last minute, Google was like, you can't do that. So they like to stick it to Google, did Sleuthster. Yeah,
or they weren't able to reshoot, maybe. And they weren't able to cut around it. So they had to maybe...
Seems like a very simple reshoot.
Do some sort of composite on top of the screen or something like that. It's super
weird.
weird.
You don't even need Lily Reinhart to reshoot a search bar.
That is true.
I don't think you even need a camera. You could just do it from your desktop.
But what we do need is Lily Reinhart in our lives more all the time, because she's so charming, which she really is. She's lovely. Okay, so now we've addressed this Sleuthster gate.
And it'll probably come back in every episode from here on out.
And I certainly hope so. So now Betty's interviewing Geraldine Grundy, and she does a really crappy job hiding her intentions.
Yeah.
She says specifically, like, hey, that student who died, he was pretty sexy, right? Like, she says he's pretty hot. Like, it's very... And I feel this is off character for Betty, who I think is a little smarter than this.
Oh my god, yeah.
I would have liked this scene to have been written a little more subtly.
Yeah.
But we learned that Geraldine, this is her first permanent placement before she was only a sub at other schools.
Right.
And whether that's the truth or not, we do not learn, which we will discuss a little later.
And we do know that she was tutoring one student whose name I did not catch, and Jason Blossom, who she called an inspiration.
Which is all really weird.
It's just gross.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would hate, like, as someone who was in band and jazz band and band president by my senior year, if my band teacher called me an inspiration, I'd kill myself.
Oh man, that was my life in theater. I was an inspiration.
I don't think I ever had a teacher call me an inspiration, and I'm so...
Yeah, you're totally cool with that, right?
With that. I'm so okay.
So then, moving on, we already talked about in the next scene, we learn that they Facebooked and LinkedIn her as well and didn't find her. And then they talk about Google 70 times.
Right.
So then the next scene is in the students' lounge.
Yep.
And we get Kevin in, which is a lovely, nice thing he's doing. He's inviting Veronica to go to movies with him, which is something as a gay guy. I love having hangout times with my platonic female friends where there's no sexual tension. That's a really positive, nice relationship to have with someone.
Also, like, gay or straight, nice relationship.
Yes, I was going to say I also have male friends that there's no sexual tension with them and we hang out and do stuff. Kevin, though, has to basically call Veronica a hag, which is a term that
Which is an old witch.
Yeah, and he's saying, he's using the term fag hag without saying fag on the air. But it's really a problematic term because I think, personally, it minimizes the relationships that straight women and gay men can have that are very important and meaningful for both of their lives.
Yeah.
And I think it sort of drudges up a stereotype that Veronica is not. Veronica is not Kevin's fag hag in the show.
No, I think it may have to do with Veronica's city upbringing too. It's like, I could see almost Betty doing it, like, he's the only gay person I know, so this is just, like, me latching on. But, like, Veronica, like, doesn't need that.
No, not at all. No. Yeah. Yeah, Veronica's excited to meet Kevin because he's gay.
It, like, gives this air of patheticness that, like, isn't...
That doesn't exist with their relationship. I agree with that. So it's, you know, once again, sometimes the writing on the show is really killer, and sometimes it's, like, off. And as we discussed before, the writing on Kevin in these first few episodes... Say Kevin and Alice are the two most problematic characters.
Yeah, they just get the shit end of the stick.
They do.
But this also does another... Anytime there's, like, a question on Riverdale, it's, like, anytime it's answered, it's the simplest way. Like, Veronica asks, who or what is the Southside Serpent?
Yes.
And Kevin's response is, they're a gang of bikers who stay on the south side of town. Which is, like, if I only heard the phrase Southside Serpent, I'd be like, sounds like a gang. And then if I were like, where are they from? I'd be like, Southside.
Totally.
Like,
yeah.
I guess it's, like, part of me, like, just because I think of Serpent and, like, Snake from The Simpsons, but it's, like, so simple.
Yeah, it's pretty obvious what it is.
Yeah, it's like when they were explaining it, Sticky Maple, it was just like, yeah, we fucking know.
Yeah, totally. We all get it. All the teenagers watching this show get it. All the adults watching the show get it.
Way more, like, advanced and knowledgeable than we could ever dream of.
This is well, this is true. I mean, they have pretty good skills when it comes to decoding media.
Yeah.
For sure. So, I agree with all that.
Yeah.
Anyway. Moving on. Then the next scene is...
You still might be ahead.
Okay.
The next one was Jughead tries to appeal to the mayor.
Oh, yeah. You want to talk about that. Go for it.
He says
What's your take on this, Kate?
Well, first he says that the drive-in is like his home, which comes back. But also, like, what mayor is going to listen to a sole 16-year-old? If there were, like, 20 of them in her office... I'd be like, oh, hear them out. But, like, one 16-year-old kid who, like, has what's perceived as a behavioral problem.
That's true.
And, like, shows up probably not smelling great. And, like, with the same dumb hat every day.
Yeah.
Like, why would you listen to this kid?
That is a good point. It's sort of an illogical scene to exist at all.
Like,
other than to forward the plot for us to understand that Riverdale is becoming a different place than it was before.
Right, but, like, we got that in the past 8 scenes. Like,
we certainly did.
I guess, and I think it's supposed to, like, villainize the mayor a little.
Definitely.
Like,
It's supposed
I'm on her side at this point. Like,
well, this is where we disagree, is you want that plot of land to be redeveloped to something nice and new and beautiful.
Right, well, but also...
And I want that to remain a drive-in forever.
Coming at this point where, like, at least in this scene, like, she's not the villain to me in this scene. Like, why would you listen to a 16-year-old kid?
No, I agree with that.
Town finance.
No, that is true. That is true.
What is it?
Very strange.
Ice Clown Town Crown. You watch Parks and Rec?
I've watched a little bit of Parks and Rec, but that reference is lost on me.
Oh, yeah, Ben Wyatt was a 16-year-old mayor who, like, drove the town into the ground, and that's why it took him a long time to get back into working politics. He put all the town's money into building, like, an ice skating complex.
Oh, jeez.
So Ice Town cost Ice Clown Town Crown.
Oh, man. So...
now we're at the scene you want to talk about.
I do want to talk about this. So, Archie's beginning to be suspicious of Geraldine. Understandably so.
Right.
So, he starts asking, I want to hear more about you.
Right.
And then she says, I went to Juilliard and I was rejected from all the symphonies.
She names 2, and they're, like, the 2 most well-known symphonies.
Yeah, and it's like, really? You couldn't get a regional gig, honey?
Yeah.
Like, so that's...
Oh, you couldn't get into the New York Philharmonic? I thought that was easy.
Yeah, and she's sort of like, I didn't even come close.
Which is also, how does she know?
Yeah, absolutely. How does she know? Well, I guess they do that in stages where they do callbacks and stuff.
Right, but also, they probably don't call back, like, that many people, considering how many people try out.
That's a really good point.
Missed the cut.
That's a very good point.
I'm basing all of this on Mozart in the Jungle.
Well, something about this episode regarding the character is we learn that nothing we know about her is true.
Maybe.
However, that's the thing, is it's never confirmed how much of this information is true and how much of it is false. Mm-hmm. But something that we can empirically say about her as a character, really the only thing, is that she is a very good cello player. We know that from seeing her play cello, which is something that is not within this world. She doesn't fake playing the cello.
Yeah, that'd be so cool if she did.
Yeah, if she Milli Vanilli'd that cello, that'd be great.
So impressed.
So
I'll
yeah.
do that at the White House once.
So I think that in itself is kind of interesting. That's the only thing that we really know.
Another interesting thing is that they're watching movies and they're using like a legitimate film projector with actual film.
And they're watching like some silent film. It looks like they're watching a Harold Lloyd comedy.
Right. So either what happened is that the 16-year-old kid who doesn't give a shit about the drive-in was like, I'm gonna get a real projector with real film. Because if they were just projecting on the wall with like a normal projector like our friends have, I'd be able to,
like a digital projector.
Yes,
yeah.
but it is film. And then so if it's not Archie's, that means Geraldine Grundy, we find out, started her life over, and one of the first things she was like, I better get a film projector.
Yeah, totally. Which she's my kind of woman, if that's what she's that interested in.
But also, insane.
It's very strange.
It's
I
so
agree.
insane. It's making the clicking noise the whole time.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, why are you like this?
Yeah, well, how did this happen? I agree with this.
What's wrong?
Oh, man. No, I do totally agree with that. And then we get to Betty and Veronica breaking into Geraldine's car.
Yes.
Which, I would believe that they would do this. This is all cool stuff. I like that Betty knows exactly how to break into a car because she fixed cars with her dad. That's canon in the comics, is that Betty's really good with cars. I like that they bring that into the series. I think that's all really cool. And then, they find her ID, and then they find in a lockbox, they find her ID. Her real name is Jennifer Gibson
from Minnesota.
And they find a gun.
Yes. And
then Betty decides to take the gun with her.
Bonkers.
Why would you do that?
Bonkers.
Why would you take it with you?
This is the problem with gun control in America.
Yeah, is that teenage girls are stealing guns from fake teachers' glove compartments.
Breaking through two locks.
Yeah, exactly. So that's really strange. That's a strange move, because if I wanted to sort of pin something on a person, I would leave all the evidence in the right place.
Yeah.
And then get the police involved and be like, yo, she has a gun, I saw it. And then they would go and find the gun in the place where you said she had a gun. So for me, that's such a strange move and doesn't make a lot of logical sense.
A lot of things don't make sense in this show.
That is true, but that's why we love it.
Love it. XOXO.
And also, too, in that scene, Veronica calls Betty a sketch queen, which I think is such a good term, and I wish it was used more often. We
do find out real quickly in a scene that they're flashing back and forth between that Jughead's dad worked with his dad is FP, worked with Fred, and was fired for stealing construction materials. Which, what the fuck are you going to do with construction materials?
Oh, you could resell them.
Right. Well, that's true. He is from the South Side.
Yes, exactly. Which is revealed in this episode. Right. But that's okay, because everybody that hopefully is listening to this already watched the episode.
Yeah, that'd be crazy if you were, like, starting and stopping.
Exactly.
That'd be very impressive. Please do that.
Yeah, do that for us. For us silly geeks. Yeah. Which I think is really interesting. And then next scene we want to discuss was
Sheriff Keller and Kevin Keller having a little father-son weird.
Okay, this is a whole thing that is so fun.
Opens with Kevin bringing his dad a High Point in a coffee mug. Like, he was like, I'm going to take this can of beer and pour it into a nice little coffee mug that, like, someone would have on their desk at work with their initial on it. Like,
so, first of all, we learn that Sheriff Keller is probably drinking on the job, much to the chagrin of all the other people, right?
I don't necessarily know. He was at home.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, with his murder board. Yeah,
I don't know if he was, like, billable hours. I don't know how that works.
I don't know if sheriffs have billable hours.
Yeah, maybe I don't think so, but also he was definitely, like, bringing his work home with him.
Definitely, by having the murder board in his house.
Right, but also it's so funny to me that, like, it wasn't like a beer stein mug. Someone was like, oh, he's drinking it out of a mug, and then, like, it got lost in translation through the props department. That's
a really good, reading of probably what happened. They're like, we need a mug, and they're like, okay. Yeah. And it's like, oh, I forgot to specify a stein. Yeah, totally.
And then, like, they were about to film, and they were like, well, it's too late now, but then instead of just, like, leaving it in a beer bottle, which I'm sure they had around.
Or they could have changed the line to, here's your coffee, Dad. Yeah. They really want to make it clear that he was having a drink, you know?
Also, though, how clear were they if they said High Point?
Yeah, well, that's pretty well known.
Yeah, for teenagers? Is it cheap?
I'm not sure how cheap it is.
If it were cheap, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure. So then let's move on here.
Yeah.
Because then we've got a very... Okay, this is an interesting conversation because I feel like this is supposed to show that Sheriff Keller and Kevin's relationship is really good and on the level. And
which, to a degree, it definitely does show that.
I was going to say that, yes, absolutely. But there's some oddness to it. I like that Sheriff Keller acknowledges that Kevin is cruising, and he's cool with that, and he understands that that's something that young gay men do.
Yeah.
And he says, hey, no cruising tonight at the drive-in. There's a murderer on the loose.
Yeah,
totally.
And the, unsavory type hang around.
Yeah, the unsavory type hang around the drive-in. And
so
Kevin
cruising.
goes, okay, Dad. And he's, frustrated by it.
Yeah.
And then Sheriff Keller says, isn't there, a nice gay guy at school you could date?
Yeah.
And then Kevin says back...
Yeah, that's me.
Now, a few things here. A, has Kevin proven himself to be nice so far?
No.
So he has a bit of a wonky self-image.
But I guess any parent thinks their kid is nice.
Yeah, and you think you are nice.
Yeah.
Almost
I know
everybody.
I'm not, but I'm openly hostile.
Apparently, yes.
I'm well known to be openly hostile.
Yes. My co-host is openly hostile. Clearly,
tell the press.
We're clearly having no fun sitting across from each other talking about
Nope.
Riverdale for hours on end
Nope.
together. So
I'm unwilling to compromise and openly hostile.
yeah, exactly. So there's that, and then also Kevin has sort of rejected any play he can get at school.
Yeah.
Or maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I believe that Kevin could have had something on the DL with Moose.
Oh, for sure.
And made a decision not to.
We also know Moose was not the first.
Yeah, that there were other boys hanging
Before
out.
Moose.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is something
also, we just really wanted to be Moose.
Well, yeah, we love Moose, but I want this to be explored a little more in season 2, Kevin's proper dating history, to flesh him out as a better character, because he's pretty mean to Moose when he rejects him, which is important to think about.
Yeah.
He's pretty mean to him.
I'm willing to believe he doesn't have much of a dating history because he is 16 years old.
Certainly.
But also, he certainly has a hookup history.
Yeah, and he seems to be really well versed in how to sort of traverse the gay world, and he knows more about hookups at 16 than I knew about until I was about 34. So just to FYI, you know what I mean? So it's he gets it. He's a pretty mature for 16 gay kid who's really has himself figured out,
Right. I feel like he knows the bandana system, and definitely whether he's a twink or a beaver or a...
I think he definitely knows that he is a little twink boy.
For now,
Yeah.
I don't think he'll always be a twink.
No, he's definitely going to grow up to be an otter or wolf, for sure.
Oh, I don't
Kevin
know what
Keller.
wolf is. I could say otter, but I don't know wolf.
Wolf is a skinny, bearded man.
Okay.
Who's sort of lithe and yeah.
So what's wolf versus beaver?
Beaver, I think the men are a little stockier and shorter.
Okay.
I think I'm a beaver.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, okay. All right.
A beaver or a cub, yeah.
I think you could be a cub.
But wouldn't you see me more as a beaver than a cub?
Yeah.
I guess it really depends on
I
whether
feel
I'm
I also feel
5 pounds heavier or 5 pounds lighter.
Yeah, I also feel there's a certain attitude that comes with being a bear that I feel translates to a cub, but cubs are just not as big.
This is true. And
So
cubs are often younger as well. Yeah.
Right. So
Mhm.
that's, I think, why I would put you as beaver, because I said beaver, because I don't think you have that, bear attitude.
That is right. I do not have that bear attitude. You are right about that.
Wow, I hope this stays in the podcast.
I hope it does as well. Okay, so. All right. So, that is an odd conversation between Kevin and his father.
Yeah.
Whatevs. Next up,
Alice. We got a lot of Alice going down. And yelling timber.
Mm-hmm. So.
Well, first she goes to the Andrews home with her husband to say that Betty and Archie should no longer be spending time together. And Hal just, he doesn't not support her, but he's just, barely there. And Fred is fuck off, lady.
Yeah, totally.
I think Fred sees that Betty's good for Archie.
He certainly does.
Because she is.
Yes. Well, she's good for everybody because she's the golden girl of Riverdale.
Right.
The golden girl. But yeah, so like, this scene is interesting, the dynamics. It's really the beginning of us seeing Hal as a proper character.
Yeah,
in
we
the
got
show.
a lot of Hal in these
in these 2 episodes.
Yeah.
In this one and then the next one for sure. Which is good because it offsets Alice.
Yeah.
Because Alice is still just written to be so unreasonable in such a strange way.
It makes me wonder why Madchen, I don't know her last name, took the role.
Yeah,
She was kind of an indie darling. Simply because of the one role I can name, which is Twin Peaks. And
then...
I don't know what else she's done, but then she took this.
Well, it's a job, and that's all well and good. And then Alice...
Oh, yeah.
Finds the gun in Betty's drawer.
Right.
And this is certainly a turning point for the Alice character, where she starts being written at least more believably, because finally we see her genuinely concerned in a more correct way about her daughter's welfare.
Yes, it's correct to be concerned that your daughter has a gun in the drawer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whether there's been a recent murder or not.
But it's like the most human we've seen her yet, because we see genuine fear from her as a character, and it's really refreshing, and it's something that I think could have come earlier. So I'm happy that it happens here.
Right. I disagree with her than choosing to read Betty's diary.
Certainly.
Because I think that's actually generally a very bad parenting move. Like, you want your kid to have that outlet of privacy.
That's correct.
But also, she did just find a gun in her drawer.
She's also been proven to be a terrible parent, so it's not like
it feels like the least. It feels like Betty should have known better.
Yeah.
To like put a lock on that.
Yeah.
Not that a diary lock isn't super easy.
Or like keep it on her phone or something for sure. Yeah,
like,
definitely.
Password lock her laptop.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, so there's all that.
Right.
And then we get to the drive-in scene, and they're watching Rebel Without a Cause, which is a really fun... It's actually a really fun choice for this episode.
Yeah.
And the reason why I really like it is clearly that film is one of the first films that portrayed teenagers who were sort of bad or rebellious in a sympathetic light. And I think that certainly that was an inspiration on Riverdale as a show, that sort of portrayal of a teenager. And the other thing about it, too, is thinking about specifically how innovative Rebel Without a Cause was when it came out, which was in the late 50s, compared to the other cultures surrounding teenagers at the time, including Archie Comics, which were so squeaky clean compared to Rebel Without a Cause. And I feel like using it as a film in this world is very blatantly showing how far we have come as a culture and as a humane culture, and the way that these characters are portrayed now versus the way they were portrayed in the 50s. So I think it's very cool and very interesting. Yeah. And we get the Southside Serpents carrying on and making a ruckus.
Yep.
Veronica shushes them.
By saying, I've dealt with worse in the East Village.
Yeah, she says, I've dealt with worse in the East Village.
Which we're differing on how we read that line.
Why do you think she says that?
I read it as she's dealt with worse gang situations in the East Village. Like, she's not afraid of them. She's dealt with, a worse ruckus, which is so the opposite of the East Village.
Yeah, totally. And the way that I think is that she's talking specifically about rich bougie bros that she's had to deal with in the East Village, that she has dealt with aplomb and can deal with a small town biker gang, basically. I will also
say East Village, where SantaCon goes, so that's hell on earth. And anyone who can deal with that is...
Yeah, she's probably had to deal with SantaCon. I wouldn't want to see Veronica have to deal with SantaCon. That's terrible. All right, so then...
Oh, we see Moose.
We see Moose making out with Midge.
We assume it's Midge.
Huh?
We assume it's Midge.
Yeah, we assume it's Midge, because we haven't really been introduced to Midge.
Because that's why, so Kevin starts ordering snacks, and then he turns and he sees, because you didn't think it was Moose, but he turns around and sees them making out and just adds more snacks, and then he's like, who cares? I'm not trying to impress anyone. So that's why I think it's Moose.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was Moose in the car. Yeah.
Right, I'm fairly certain it's Moose.
So, but then, right after he gets all the snacks...
He turns around.
And there is one of our favorite characters in the show, for the first time, Joaquin.
DeSantos.
Joaquin DeSantos, who's a character created for the show, who is a Southside Serpent.
Right, which we don't know yet.
We don't know yet. We just think he's a cute boy.
Yeah.
And... he said his first line to Kevin is a really great hit on you line. He says, "Not so tough without your beard anymore,"
yeah.
which is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And then we're off to the races when it comes to Kevin and Joaquin.
Right, and before we see them making out, we see Archie breaks up with Grundy by giving her very fancy.
Yeah,
cello bow.
Archie pawned one of his guitars to get her this cello bow.
So, which means he has multiple guitars.
Yeah, as a 16-year-old boy who comes from a decidedly middle-class background.
Right, who just started playing.
Yeah, which is a little weird.
Right. And then also, it's a breakup gift, and also, if it's a nicer bow than what she already had, having gone to Juilliard.
Yep.
Like, it was $1 bazillion.
Totally. Yeah, so...
when I break up with people, they're lucky to get a hug.
Absolutely. Archie's the nicest guy to have dump you in the history of the world.
It's like a treat to be dumped by him.
Yeah, I mean, Archie's just a treat in general, as far as I'm concerned. And this just goes along with him really being inherently a good guy in his heart and trying to do the right thing here. And for him, the right thing is to pay off Miss Grundy by giving her a giant, beautiful, expensive bow. And
Alice, Fred, and Betty burst in before we cut to Joaquin and Kevin going at it hard.
A hot makeout sesh.
Hard. I think there was some dry humping in there that we did not see because it is network TV.
Yes, but it was a hot makeout sesh.
Yeah.
Where then Joaquin realizes that Kevin is the sheriff's son.
Right.
Kevin realizes that Joaquin is a Southside Serpent.
Right, by revealing his dark mark.
So it's love from both sides of the tracks.
Yeah.
It's the Jets versus the Sharks. All over again.
Oh, God, yeah.
What a nightmare for everybody involved. Yeah.
And Keller's Officer Krupke. Oh, but who's... Never mind.
Okay. So, yeah, we've got all that. And then we cut back to this confrontation scene with Alice, Hal, right? Hal's there.
Hal is not there.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Fred is there.
Alice, Fred, Grundy, Betty,
and
Archie. Now, this scene is weird. We're going to dissect it.
Yes.
But I will say all the points of view come across, and the scene is appropriately complex for the situation at hand, which I appreciate when really the rest of this Archie-Grundy love affair thing has not been handled totally great.
Right. Every character is on game in this scene.
I agree, including Geraldine Grundy.
Yes.
Absolutely.
What I would say, it opens very early. Alice says that she thought the one thing they could keep Riverdale safe from was child predators, which is insane.
Yes, because there's been a murder of a child, so clearly they have not kept child predators out of Riverdale.
Right, also, like, when
she's just talking about sex stuff. She thinks she didn't think any weird sex stuff happened with Jason, but we don't even know that yet.
Yeah.
Maybe something awful happened with Jason that was sex related.
We know Miss Grundy tutored him.
Yeah, that's true. We do know that. So who knows? Yeah. Anyway. That being said, Miss Grundy behaves properly in the scene. She wants to leave.
Properly in character game. Yeah,
she behaves properly in character game. Archie behaves properly. Betty behaves properly. And then Miss Grundy says, you know what? I will quit my job. I will leave town. I will be gone in the morning. Now, this is a surprising thing for her to be able to get away with.
Yeah.
Because there is an ongoing murder investigation.
And she faked her identity.
She faked her identity and had a gun in her car.
Yeah, and they're like, yeah, it's for the best.
Yeah, and they're like, get out of here. Instead of being like, we're taking you right to the police.
Yeah.
You could be a murder suspect now.
You are, like, suspect number one.
Yeah, absolutely. Despite the fact that she was with Archie down by Sweetwater River.
Because we know that July 4th is not when Jason died. We know that gunshot did not hit Jason.
Exactly, and they all know that as well at this point in the series. So it is weird that they let her go.
Yeah.
And then, let's just talk about her last scene right now before we move on with the rest of the cool plot stuff. Then the final scene that we see her is driving away of Riverdale. She's leaving.
She's not in the car yet.
She's about to get in the car. She's wearing these heart-shaped Lolita-style glasses.
Again.
And...
drinking a big gulp.
Yeah, and she's like just staring at the teenage boys.
And lowers her sunglasses again.
And it's like... So, is this final shot supposed to show that she's some sort of
predator?
Serial predator, or
she goes town to town fucking the children?
Yeah, which is so strange to me, and
bizarre.
Puts into question any of the information we learned about her, that she was in an abusive relationship, that she was at Juilliard, that she taught at other schools.
And it questions her relationship with Archie.
It does. It questions all of that.
It makes it seem like she was using Archie. But why?
For what purpose, other than the fact that he's like an attractive young man?
Yeah.
And perhaps she, wanted to be physical with him, which I certainly understand, Mr. KJ Appa.
Though, sometimes like I see him on screen, I'm like, oh, that's right, he's a tiny little baby.
Totally.
He still has baby face.
He certainly does. Yeah, absolutely. Hey, I think it's great. But yeah, like it's not resolved, and I hope that there is in season 2 some big reveal with that character.
Yeah.
I hope she comes back and it's like, hey, P.S. the whole time, I was a superhero. Like something that we're not expecting.
Oh, yeah, she's one of Sabrina's aunts.
Yeah, exactly. Totally, though. Like something like that. Because it's like really strange to me the way that that's resolved. And it's resolved very quickly. It seems like a long burn plot point and then is resolved at the end of episode 4. And then she is gone. And she's barely mentioned in the series after that.
Yeah.
As well. There's a little bit of mention of her in the next episode, which we will discuss for that podcast. But other than that, she's gone. She's done.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of interesting. Regardless, then we get to some fun stuff. Sheriff Keller asks Kevin, how's the movie? And Kevin said, I really liked it, especially the twist ending.
Which, yeah.
Rebel Without a Cause doesn't have a twist ending, really. So he's just lying. He's like, P.S. Dad, I totes hooked up, and you don't know. Hey-oh. And then they go into back home, and their house has been broken into.
Yeah.
And Sheriff Keller's murder board has been ruined. Positively ruined.
Yes.
Que terrible. Then we do have a really good scene, which is the first scene I like with Alice, where Alice says to Betty, we can't have secrets between us. And Betty says back, what's my name? And Alice says...
Very Breaking Bad.
Yes, very much so. And says, Elizabeth Cooper. And then Betty says, that's right.
I'm Elizabeth, I'm not Polly.
I'm Elizabeth, I'm not Polly.
Want to know what Polly's short for, if it's short for anything. Polly, right?
Pauline, probably.
I also know somebody's kid is named Pauline.
Or Paula. It could be Paula as well. But yeah, so I think that's all kind of interesting, and at least we get to see another side of Alice.
Yeah.
And then this is when Alice becomes a character I actually want to see on screen, quite frankly.
There's a big thing that happens right before the scene and right after. Right before we skipped was that Hermione reveals that the money that Hiram used to buy the drive-in is the last of their money. Yes,
truth. So that's a pretty big gamble.
And also that Veronica's line of credit at Barney is over, which is so funny that anyone shops at Barney's.
Yeah, I don't think Veronica would be a Barney shopper.
Or like literally anyone.
I think Veronica would be mad into like Prada, like stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, she would go to like Nordstrom.
Yeah, Nordstrom. Yeah, absolutely.
Like Bloomingdale's not Barney's.
Yeah, she would go to Bloomie's. Yeah. Anyway.
And then right after the scene between Alice and Betty brings out her new diary, which, if you will notice, is black when her old diary was pink. It really shows a shift in Betty's character and how she sees the world, where she was writing about her day in a pink journal. So her day-to-day life was okay, and now it's black like her heart. She's been betrayed. There's a lot to say about the color of the show overall. Like
the color schemes are wonderful.
Jughead's black. Veronica's black and white, the blossoms are red, the Andrews are green.
Mm-hmm. It's really cool, and it's
Yeah.
very comic booky, actually.
Yeah.
It's I mean, the show is visually incredibly striking.
Right.
Which can't be understated, because I think it really carries actually a lot of the plot holes and sort of strange writing, is how beautiful the show looks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, totally.
I feel like the plot holes are almost like not even, like, I'm convinced that they're going to be filled.
Oh, I sure hope so. Because
Yeah.
I love the show.
Yeah.
And I don't want it to collapse on its own weight. Anyway, moving on. Okay, so.
The final scene.
The final scene is Jughead. He is spray painting his name.
Right.
Jughead
Well,
was here.
He was, in fact, living in the drive-in.
Yes, which we learn because he has a big backpack with him with all his stuff.
And there's a bed.
Yeah, and there's a bed in the projection booth.
Yes.
So basically, Jughead is living my romantic fantasy to just live in a movie theater, which would be ideal for me with the amount of movies that I see and how much I love movies. And then one of the Southside Serpents comes up to him.
Well, also, I should say, Jughead Jones was WZ.
Oh, yeah, we forgot to talk about that.
So dumb. Like, no, like, again, I don't have access to a lot of teenagers.
Yeah.
I don't think they write like that.
No, most teenagers.
I think that is very,
it's cliche.
2000 and late, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very 2000 and late. I very much agree with that. So then, Jughead then says, so this character, the Southside Serpent, who ends up being FP, his father, says to him, they're going to tear it all down. And Jughead says, maybe they'll take it down brick by brick, store it in the town hall storage, and rebuild it in 100 years and wonder who the hell we all were.
Right.
And I think that's so beautiful.
Right. I think it's dumb.
I love it. I think it's such an incredible line and like sort of the lost America and the lost family that Jughead's trying to regain.
I wonder if we differ on this type of thing because I have to deal with straight guys more. That
may be the case. Yes, absolutely. And maybe because I'm Canadian, so the American dream means something super different to me. Yeah, that's certainly a possibility, for sure.
Interesting.
And then we learn that Juggy was living in the drive-in, and we learned that Serpent, Skeet Ulrich, was his dad. And I just want to say, as a fan of Jughead, once again, this is a very smart portrayal of this character. This explains his cynicism. Mm-hmm. This explains why maybe he's a little more worldly than the other teenagers. Yep. It is so smart, and it's stuff that fills in the gaps of literally 75 years of comic book history. So I love it. It is super cool, and I think it's such a good move for the show.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
And that's this episode. So let's talk about our power rankings.
Power rankings.
All right, what do we have here?
Go from the bottom up. At the bottom is Moose because I insisted he be on our list.
Mm-hmm, because he's making out with a lady and influencing the plot.
And he kind of it's important to say, he holds Kevin's attention at the snack stand, so there's enough time for Joaquin to introduce himself.
This is true.
Also, Moose forever. Right above him, FP.
Mm-hmm.
Who, I think also sort of drives the relationship between Veronica and Hermione because...
Mm-hmm. He's very unseen during all of this. He's just glimpsed at, but he's pulling a lot of strings.
Yeah, Veronica hears about it and feels like she's being lied to.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of promotes that relationship. Above FP is Grundy.
Mm-hmm.
Going out with a bang.
Yeah, Grundy going out with a bang. Yeah, very much manipulating the scenes.
Above Grundy, we have Kevin.
Yep, definitely. Kevin who goes against his father's wishes and really pushes the plot forward.
Yes. Archie.
Yeah, Archie after that. Archie has a good episode.
Yes.
Archie behaves like a proper kid.
Yeah.
He is smart. He is really trying to suss out what's going on with him and Grundy.
Well, still not doing necessarily what's best for him because he's a teenage boy.
Yeah, but he's way less of a fuckboy in this episode.
Yeah, certainly.
Which is really awesome.
Right.
Yeah, good for him.
Jughead sort of becomes one, but that's...
Yes, that's true. Jughead's a bit of a fuckboy in this episode. That's true.
Right above Archie, we have Alice.
Mm-hmm.
Mover and shaker this episode. Get stuff done.
Yeah, really get stuff done. Yeah.
Above Alice, we have Hermione. Mm-hmm. Hermione's never been this high on a list.
That's true. This is a really good episode for Hermione.
We get a lot out of Hermione.
She takes Fred on a date.
Yes.
We learn that she's really manipulating the business strings when it comes to the Lodge family fortune.
Yep.
Good episode for Hermione.
Jughead at number 2.
Mm-hmm. Trying to save his home. Beloved home, his drive-in.
Yeah.
His home both physically and metaphorically.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And artistically.
Our number 1, Sweet Betty.
Yeah, Betty's awesome in this episode.
I would say almost at this point that this is a show about Betty.
You know, I would say that, except that the show does such a good job shifting focus, because sometimes I feel it's a show about Veronica, and later on in the season, this episode included being the beginnings of this, I feel it's a show about Jughead as well. Yeah. It also tries to be a show about Archie, but sometimes it doesn't really succeed.
I don't know that it even tries. I think they see Archie as this anchor to what it's going to be, but then works on everything around him while he stays stagnant.
Yes, which is really fascinating, actually, comparatively to the role he plays in the comics. Yes. Which is really, you know, everything's seen through his eyes. Yeah. Good old Arch, yeah. Let's talk about our crushes.
Our crushes! Oh my god, my number one is Jughead.
Me too. Yeah, me too.
My number two is Joaquin.
Oh, my number two is Kevin.
Oh, our number two is Kadeem.
Yes, they could.
Or make out against a fence behind a shack.
Yeah.
And my number three is Betty.
Your number three is Betty for this episode. Yeah. Cool. My number three is Miss Grundy.
Ooh.
Yeah, I think she as you said before, she goes out with a bang. Yeah. I care about her a lot in this episode, despite the fact that I don't learn a lot about her.
She's a monster.
And I think she's really charismatic in this episode. And I really like her in this episode.
Yeah.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. So.
Now you want to talk.
Okay, so I just want to talk a little bit about the differences between Miss Grundy in the show and Miss Grundy in the comics.
Right.
So there's a really lovely nod to the comics version of Miss Grundy in this episode, where they figure out that the actual Miss Grundy was an old lady who looks very much like the Miss Grundy in the comics. White hair in a bun, all that stuff. And she died 8 years previous. In the comics, the early appearances of Miss Grundy from the 40s, she is portrayed really as an ancient teacher.
Yeah.
A shrill, old woman. Then she's de-aged a little bit in the comics to just be a woman with white hair who is particularly hard and strict on the students and doesn't let them get away with their shenanigans. Mm-hmm. And then, as things move forward, then she's... And I think this has to do with the cultural view of women and of teachers changing in general. She's still looked at as very strict, and she's still certainly an authority figure, but she's strict because she loves the kids, and she wants them to do well, and she cares about them. That we're sort of talking 80s, 90s era of the comics. That's what happens to her. That makes sense, right?
Yeah.
And then, last but not least, just the last 10 years or so, we've seen a real fully rounded portrayal of her in the comics. And I brought this up last episode, but I really do feel like if you want a proper portrayal of the character, I just talked about these comics last time too in regards to Chuck Clayton, read the first 12 issues of Life with Archie, in which Geraldine retires, falls in love with Mr. Weatherby, and then develops a kidney disease and passes away. And then there's a really lovely funeral scene with her where they're all remembering all the teaching moments with her that were really, really important and special. And it's a really lovely portrayal in a comic book of the impact a good teacher can have on a kid's life.
Yeah.
So check that out. I think it's really, really fun. And they're really the only comics, I would say, that are important in the Archie canon that don't just feature Geraldine yelling and screaming at the kids.
Yeah, because I picture her as the recess monitor on the show Recess.
Totally, which is really valid.
I'm trying to find her name or a picture. I don't even...
Well, we could call her just the recess monitor.
Everyone does. Oh, here's one. Yeah, the recess monitor on Recess.
What's the character's name?
Good question.
Yeah, I've seen that character
Miss
before.
Krutke.
Oh, so the
No. Miss Spinster.
Yeah, that's very similar.
Yeah.
And the name Grundy, Mrs. Grundy or Ms. Grundy, that apparently, I learned this recently on Wikipedia, is a name for an old spinster woman that's existed since the 1800s in England.
Oh,
so that's what they named the character after. Now I know what to
call myself when I'm 40 and still single.
Amen, honey. You and me both.
We're gonna be Grundy.
We're gonna be Grundys
together.
Of course, Grundys together watching Riverdale.
Oh,
I love it.
Gonna be on.
It's a beautiful future for us.
Oh wow, I love it.
Okay, so that wraps up another episode.
Right, we want to do some plugs here.
Absolutely. What's going on with you?
Absolutely nothing. I have 4 races this coming weekend. By the time
sweet.
this is out, you will not know that. It will have been passed, but I will be coxing 4 out of 5 coxed races.
Oh, man. Okay.
I asked for some more racing time, and boy, did I get it.
That's awesome.
You can follow me on Twitter at Kate Vatter. My website is katevatter.com.
Lovely.
My Instagram is at Kate Vatter. My Facebook is facebook.com/Kate Vatter.
Oh, awesome. Thank you, Kate. Yeah.
Very findable.
You can check me out at www.louispearlman.com. I say it all the way through like a grown-up man.
Oh, good for you.
I know,
I'm
it's
sorry,
great.
https
Yes, exactly.
///katevatter.com. V as in Velociraptor, ATTER. That's how I explain it to pharmacists.
Very good, Kate. And you can also check out, I'd like to hype Robopop, which is my hip-hop improv team, because we've been doing some really fun shows and we're developing something new we're really excited about. So check us out on Facebook. And also check out my other podcast. That's my music podcast with my friend Kyle Gordon.
And subscribe to this.
Kick the Jukebox. Please rate and subscribe this podcast if you're a Riverdale fan and you want us to keep doing this work.
Friends.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or if you don't enjoy Riverdale but like hearing about it anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Please rate and subscribe our podcast.
Yes,
and we will see you back here next week for the next episode. Episode 5, Heart of Darkness. It's going to be cool. It's going to be awesome. A lot happens.
Love the next episode.
It's the creepiest episode so far. Yes. So see you then. Thank you for joining us on XOXO Riverdale. 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 Riverdale.